What's up, everybody? Salama from Made Gains, and I'm happy to have my chiropractor, Dr. Rob, with me today. And the general topic for today's discussion is how to prevent lifting injuries. So Rob, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Dr. Rob Morano. I'm the clinic owner of Finish First Health and Performance. And I think it's a really good idea that we capture some of Salama's and I's conversation on camera because things can get pretty technical. And I probably wish we should have recorded some stuff in the past. So
sure.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Generally speaking, like what kind of things would you advise like new lifters or experienced lifters on how to really prevent injuries as a weightlifter?
It's important that we have some prerequisites, including, obviously knowledge is important, right? Connecting yourself with knowledgeable individuals either in the gym or even hiring a personal trainer at the beginning to kind of collect some of that knowledge. But aside from knowledge, there's like lifting, squat, bench, dead are very mechanical processes that require, separate joint function. So as a squat is such a compound movement, it requires a bunch of joints to work together.
Very true.
Now,
Yeah.
if individually one of these joints are not able to do so, then theoretically the whole system will break down, and then that whole squat won't look as pretty as you intend, or how you envision it. We see that a lot in the gym, right?
No, very true. And actually, one point to add to that is, speaking of the squat, and one thing, becoming dysfunctional is like one of the main reasons I came to see Rob is because my right knee started acting up, and that was from my squat, and more specifically from being flat-footed, right? I was flat-footed, and the arch in my right foot was kind of breaking down, causing sort of like this internal rotation, and how it affected my knee, down to my ankle, down to my hip, and eventually the pain was in the knee, but that came from a small mechanical issue.
And that's a classic example of how the whole system needs to rely on each other, and something as simple as a foot breakdown can lead to ankle and knee and hip, low back issues. That might be the reason why you have a hike on your shoulder if you really want to stretch that game too far. But that's an excellent example.
I think another great point that you brought up is that to get in touch with people who have knowledge, right? And one thing I want to add to that is it doesn't matter even if you're a seasoned lifter, right? Like even if I've been lifting for 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter. I think it's still a good idea to get a strength coach, a chiropractor, whoever, like an experienced personal trainer, to watch your form, make sure you're doing the right thing. Because even me, I've been squatting for years, and I still have Rob check out my form and see what's happening, right?
Well, even for someone like myself, who I feel like I know a fair bit about biomechanics, what I think is happening isn't always happening, right? So even having a watchful eye, someone they don't even have to completely understand biomechanics, what's going on, but it doesn't look so hot.
Something's out there,
And I mean, these days it's very, very socially acceptable to record yourself, and so you might want to do that to make, I didn't even know I was caving there, or I didn't even know I was bending there. So it's good to have that awareness, and whether it's a chiropractor, personal trainer, or just straight up training partner, like it's good to surround yourself with people that just know.
How do you feel about seeing like a chiropractor or a physiotherapist even before there are any real injuries? You think that's still a good idea if someone has a capability?
Absolutely. 90% of anything is prevention, right?
Sure.
So a lot of injuries are preventable. Athletic injuries are not always preventable, but when in the case of let's say lifting, especially recreational lifting, most of it is preventable. Maybe it's your knee. For me, I have a little bit of a hip issue, and although I do a real good job of maintaining it on my own, I feel that every 1 to 2 months, it's just nice to get someone to clear that out for me, so I can go back to maintaining it.
Some people will get injured from a lift,
right?
Or they'll see a lot of people getting injured from a lift, and they'll start to say things like, that exercise is bad for your knee, or bad for your back. Like one example is, I got injured I hurt my knee from squatting. Does that make squatting a bad exercise?
That's an excellent question. I mean, there's truth on both sides. There's someone that once said that it's squatting is not bad for the knees. It's bad knees are bad for squatting. So it goes along the lines of what we were talking about before, and making sure that your ankle has adequate dorsiflexion. If you don't have adequate dorsiflexion, it's going to give rise to other injuries going up the kinetic chain, right? So it's not necessarily that the exercise is bad. It's the person performing it. It might be the way they're performing it. That being said, like form differs from person to person for so many reasons. Gender, ethnicity, whatever the hell you've been doing with your body for about 20 years, 25 years.
Sitting at a desk or
right. So
construction work or whatever it may be.
Exactly. So that fits into how someone moves.
I've heard a lot of times that a muscle can get stronger, bigger, sometimes faster than a joint can keep up with it, correct? Is it possible that someone is constantly loading a barbell, say on a squat, and their quads are getting bigger and stronger, and that can bear the weight? Or maybe their joints haven't caught up just yet?
I mean, I don't know if that's like completely correct. I think I know where you're coming from. I think on that one, but the joints will pretty much tell the muscles what they're able to do. Muscles don't really have this individual brain saying, I'm going to turn on right now. It's more like a positional thing. So it's important to put those muscles in a position that sets it up for success.
So I guess it's more about positioning and the function of the movement more than, it makes sense, more than the muscle and the joint relationship.
For me, my whole approach is to make sure the joints are functioning properly, because when the joints are functioning properly, I trust that when that joint is moving through its correct process, the right muscles will turn on at the right time. And sequencing is an issue, but it also comes down to underlying factors, like why is that joint out of position? If that joint is out of, let's say the shoulder, for example, okay, if I'm looking for a straight rotation or external rotation and my shoulder starts to ride up, you're putting increased stress on structures in the front. It's very simplified example, but and you're putting a very mechanically advantageous position for the posterior stuff. So is this joint operating correct? No. Right? Can you still get it done? Yeah, but over time it's going to cause some problems.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we understand the way our joints are supposed to move, and ultimately put those muscles that you want to get strong in a position to get strong properly, because you can strengthen these muscles. They will get bigger and stronger, but you're just layering over bad movement. And when you layer over bad movement, make a bad movement strong, it's not going to carry over into life very well.
I feel like I've learned that the hard way, where it's like you start to ingrain these bad motor patterns, and you start getting strong. So you enjoy lifting big weights, and then it's really hard to step back to lighter weights and relearn a movement after you've gotten to a certain strength level.
Yeah,
so,
I definitely hear that. The ego can be at play sometimes, There might be a time where you need to peel back some weight and learn how to do things efficiently and properly, so that you can do this for a long time.
We don't want to take anything to either extreme one way or the other.
Sure.
So we can say that, and I fully agree. Like, it's not the squat itself that is causing these injuries, and it's more so the movement pattern that the person, maybe the way the person is executing it.
Right.
But I guess, would you say that there's still a benefit of cycling your exercises and maybe not using more demanding exercises like a back squat or like a heavy deadlift, and rotating exercises to try to prevent injuries?
Absolutely, variety is key. Again, it's not good to switch things all the time so quickly. You do need to have a proper time slot to allow adaptation, or else what are you really doing, right? You're just going in there and throwing around random weights.
For sure.
But it's good to be organized and succeed in a good fashion. But varieties is still the best. I mean, if you want to build stiffness in let's say a conventional deadlift, your hamstrings are operating very much in the sagittal plane, whereas I kind of tend to really enjoy the sumo, and throwing in the sumo for a different reason. I feel like it's a little more athletic because you're having your hamstrings operate in at a different angle. So you get a lot more compliance on your tissues while getting the benefit of really being able to load them up in a powerful fashion. So other lifts, some people will refer to them as accessories, make maybe your big lifts more successful.
Even better, yeah.
Even better, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I like to really start my programming with, let's say, something loaded, very front loaded. Whether I'm doing reverse lunges or I'm doing front squats, I like to start there because it really builds up the anterior chain. Now, the anterior chain is to have stiffness there. It's really good for by the time you get your back squat or your weight behind your center of mass. You're very strong in the front. So there's methods that you can use to incorporate these variations. But thoroughly important. I
a lot of guys again learn one major movement, say it be the back squat, the low bar back squat, or like a sumo deadlift, and they'll pretty much stick to that the whole year. And I think overuse injury is a real thing, correct? Where if you're doing the same movement all the time, things will tend to break down in those exercises more
absolutely.
often.
People tend to stick with what they like or what they're good at, right? Where we know it's always good to work on your weaknesses.
For sure.
Right? They might make your strengths even stronger. But it really comes down to the question of why people are training, right? Are you in there? Are you a competitive powerlifter? Are you in there to perform, or are you in there for function?
Yeah.
Right. So
it's an excellent point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So the two don't really kind of always meet, right? Performance, you're in there. You have chosen your sumo deadlift as your successful lift, so it's good to ingrain that, regardless of building stiffnesses that make you less successful in other planes or other movements, right? Whereas if you're in there for function, you're in there for quality of movement. You're in there to get stronger, but also you want to be able to
move better.
You want it to transfer over to life, right? And I think that's a big thing. That some may be forgetting these days, that we are in the gym to practice how to move better, right? We're taking, and that should transfer over to being a better human, better moving human.
Yeah.
Whereas
a better athlete.
Whereas if you're training to perform, I am trained to become a better powerlifter.
Yeah.
So my structure will change. I might not be great at reaching in the back seat. I might not be great to bend over sideways to pick up a child or something like that, but I can pick up 700 pounds off the ground.
That's right. If you are a power lifter and your competition lifts include the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, obviously you have to train those throughout the year, and maybe you can periodize things like your volume, your intensity.
Sure, absolutely.
But for a lot of people who are just regular gym goers and they want to be muscular, they want to be strong, they want to be functional and healthy,
right?
Then they're probably better off focusing on functionality and not just performance in very specific lifts.
Sure. And then maybe using these as exactly what they are. They're tests, right? So these are tests for strength, and not necessarily they're great builders of, but there's so many other exercises that can help build strength and with way less risk.
Yeah.
Right. So powerlifters are able to do what they're doing because they've allowed a few years of adaptation. Like if you look at a powerlifter, they are thick. They are thick in ways that normal people are not.
Yeah.
Right. So their body has been designed, redesigned, and has morphologically changed to handle load in the positions that they are. So. They're not as worried about some flexion coming out of the spine because their ligaments, their joints, all their tissues are
adapted.
And their risk of injury is somewhat declined. Whereas you get someone that goes in and has only been doing it for about a year and is starting to lift pretty heavy, but they pay a little attention to the mechanics. They're more likely to get injured, right?
So what are the most common injuries that you see from most powerlifters, bodybuilders on a day-to-day basis?
It's a combination, right? So from the novice, it's too much too soon, right? So not allowing that adaptation. So those ones you'll see the low back pain and stuff like that.
Do you think it usually comes from them trying to lift too much weight too fast, or just training too often too soon, or?
It's definitely a combination of things, right? So if, like, there's different programs. Like if you're on a small off and you're doing things 5 days, squatting 5 days in the week or 2 days in the week. I mean, expect some fatigue, expect some adaptive response and to being tight, because what you're asking your body to be is tight.
Yeah.
Don't complain about being tight after if you're asking. Oh, your body's trying to do you a favor. You're asking it to be tight.
Yeah.
It's becoming tight. It's doing its job.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So that's the typically
it's adapting to the stimulus that you're constantly feeding it with.
Completely. And that's all it ever does.
Right?
It's all it ever does. The other type of injuries you see is more like with the not so much with the novice. I find with the actual competitors, they tend to have a thing that gets cranky on them, and it might be from some other insufficiency, like let's say their shoulder gets really cranky from squatting. You know what I mean? So it's not so much their lower back giving. They've learned to deal with the fact that there's a little bit of knee pain involved in what they do as often as they do it with the intensity that they do it with. But there are other mechanical insufficiencies that need to be worked on, and that doesn't always affect their performance, but it's always there, and they have to make considerations, right? And if
I guess it's more the unexpected things, eh? Like if a guy is squatting, he knows, okay, my knee might feel it, or if I'm deadlifting, I know my back is gonna feel it.
Right.
But as soon as you feel it somewhere where you shouldn't be feeling it, they're probably like, what's going on here?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone in the way that they're set up, the body is not very symmetrical to begin with, right? And to make, we just have to make sure that these asymmetries don't get the best of us. So they always find a way to become as stiff as possible without having any major deviations in form, and that's okay. But those are the things that they have to look out for, and understanding what their deficiencies are, where their asymmetries may be breaking down their form, and just put up blocks and make sure that those are managed, because the truth is, like I said, they're in more the performance side, so they're gonna need to get someone like me to just make sure they're maintaining it, or teaching them how to maintain it, because they're gonna do this anyway. You might as well be doing it to set yourself up for success, right?
Shoulder pain from the bench press. Like they even have a term now, or it's been around for a while, of like the bench, or what's called the bencher's shoulder or something like that. Like, what are some of the reasons behind shoulder injuries from bench press?
So this is my own personal thought. I mean, not to get involved in some of the philosophical side as to why we are all inherently asymmetrical, but the bench, as much as the squat and the deadlift, require a fair amount of symmetry, and you're asking either your feet to put force into the ground and accept force back from the ground and come up in a perfect fashion, but truthfully it's not going to happen, right? And the same goes with the bench. So now you're putting weight on a bar, and you're lifting, you want to decline this weight and bring it back up symmetrically, but if your parts are not symmetrical, it's not likely going to happen. And I don't want to give you guys a complex about it, but go in the gym, watch an aerial view or even an axial view of someone's bench. You always see the bar tilting more on one side.
It's so crazy you say that, because I posted a video of me squatting, and I think I mentioned it in the caption itself before anyone else.
Your bar dips, right?
Huh?
You bar dip?
Oh, you saw it, right?
Well, no, it did happen.
Or you know
all the
what
time.
it is?
Yeah.
Where I had the bar and one is like, I'm squatting and it's slightly slanted. I never knew until I watched that video, but it is slightly slanted.
Right, and it doesn't feel that way, right?
Not at all, no.
And like I said, this can be coming from something from the foot as to why the bar sits asymmetrically, right? But the point is, like, I don't want to go on a tangent, but we want to make sure we put as much as we can. We put blocks on those asymmetries, so they don't lead us to significant dysfunction that we look terrible when we're squatting. But
so what do you mean by a block? You mean like?
I find a way to account for that asymmetry. So to use you as an example, your right foot like to collapse a little bit, that caused some kinetic chain dysfunction going up. So we learned how to build some tension in that foot, set that foot up in a good position, which gives rise to better ankle, knee, hip, shoulder function. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
that's what I mean by putting up blocks. So
That's
that because of the pathways of least resistance, the weight and force are going to want to travel in a direction. Just make sure you don't allow it to go as far as it's going to, and which is going to cause you injury, right?
Yeah, I've definitely been a lot more conscious of foot positioning during my squat, especially on my right foot.
Sure.
So as far as bench press, how does that asymmetry play into that?
You know, we can chase this back to the center. Like, how are we setting up our core? Right? Are we setting up our core, and is our rib cage a little bit tilted? Is it lifted? Is it lifted and tilted? Now, the shoulder blades, they are contoured to the rib cage, right? So if the rib cage is shifted, maybe, or is not sitting the same both sides, naturally those shoulder blades are not going to sit the same both sides, right? So now you're giving rise to the actual glenohumeral joint, the shoulder joint, which is the shoulder blade is the house for that, right? So it fits on like a golf ball and tee scenario. So if the shoulder blade is situated differently, you can suspect that the shoulder function is going to be asymmetrical, right? And you can see that in the way things come down. Some people are at the top, they're way up here, and some people, when they come down, they're way further back, and the bar dips a lot like that. So I have suspicion, if we're using mechanics as explanation to why injuries happen, because lifting is such a mechanical process, then we're going to blame the fact that, you know, in some position of that lift, that certain structures are seeing forces that they probably shouldn't have. Going back to the example I used about the shoulder, if you don't have adequate rotation in that shoulder and it's coming down, it's going to start pulling and riding out. And I think most of us, whoever tried a lift that was probably too heavy for us, the first thing you do is set yourself up asymmetrically, or your shoulder dips, or so your dysfunctions kind of like reveal themselves. So when you load up those asymmetries, and and subsequently load up certain structures too much because of those asymmetries, I think that's where
they start to show up more.
Yeah,
right?
sure. You know, we're talking about frictions, rubs, pulls, pinches, stuff like that. That's going to really ultimately cause you pain, and be given a name as bencher's shoulder.
For sure.
Right?
How do we sort of attack or address those asymmetries that can cause some of those issues?
So going back to what I said before is, we're all built very differently. You know what I mean? Our bone structure is dependent on so many factors. Like, women have a different pelvis than men. You know what I mean? Like, there's more than four different variations of the way your acromion can be tilted. So
sorry, I just want to mention the pelvis difference for women being because they have to give birth.
Sure.
And things of that nature.
So
it's not a sexist statement.
No, it's not. It's not. It's actually science. It's real science.
Like they have to give birth, so they need more space
so
in certain
the whole
places.
width, the tilt of it, especially the sacrum, which is the bone that sits between the hip
hips?
bones.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's tilted differently than men.
And you're talking about the shoulder, what do you call it, the bicronium or
the acromion. It's that end piece on the shoulder blade.
Yeah.
That's kind of like at the top there. You can, if you feel the just above the actual shoulder joint, you feel that bone there. That's the acromion, and that has several different variations of the way it likes to tilt, which is going to dictate how successful you are, or how smooth your shoulder flexion is, or something else, right? So it's important to understand your own structure first, right? And if you we're tying in a lot of thoughts here, but finding someone that's able to show you where you're deficient.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very
Some people, a lot of the rehab cues are set up for people that do have flat feet. What about the people that don't have flat feet, right? What are you doing there? Most people can't answer that question, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting some quality information unique to you, right? And someone that's going to put you through a quality motion assessment that's going to be able to catch things that may be even beyond your structure. Maybe it's a coordination thing, right? Maybe it's a deficiency in awareness of what your core position to be, because things got to be in a position to work well. If everyone leans way back and tries to flex their abs, You can't.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So
Yeah.
things have to be in a good position.
So one thing that I often get asked online is, what if we don't have access to someone who's, experienced at treating lifters and maybe they're not that good, or someone who just doesn't have the capability, they don't have coverage or they don't have the financial means. What are some things that they can do to try to treat these things on their own? If even possible.
Another good question. You're on fire today, man.
I appreciate it, man.
The 101s, man. I know, it doesn't take much to study your anatomy 101. It doesn't take much to really grasp physiology 101. I mean, the absolute basics.
Yeah.
And once you know, let's say, what the function of the elbow is, I mean, in the simplest form, that it's just supposed to do this. I know there's rotations involved and, supinations and pronations and inflections and extensions, but generally it's supposed to do this.
Yeah.
Figuring out how your unique structure works and then exploring it, finding its outermost motion, and when, also that being said, when you're training, you're loading it, knowing what your ranges are and training through those full and safe ranges, right? Once you explore something more complex like the hip, you might find out what your explanation is for not being able to sit so low in your squat. Because this is another topic for another day, but I think one of the biggest things that's lacking these days is prescription. Right? You see a lot of people in the gym mobilizing for the sake of mobilizing and just moving through motions that they're already good at, whereas somewhere embedded in that motion there's one point that actually sticks, which can probably be blamed for that small motion can be blamed for your big mistake in your lift.
So it could be one small thing that has a bigger impact than.
Absolutely. So going through and feeling and getting some good awareness as to where your structures fit in the 101. Yeah. Right. And you become pretty well educated and self-taught on.
So knowledge of self. So know yourself.
Know yourself.
Basically, that's what you have to know yourself. So there's one last thing, and we'll wrap up with this.
Cool. I can be here all day, my man.
Yeah. There's more of these coming, so stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe and like. I'm not used to doing that. I'm not a YouTuber per se yet, so I'm not used to doing that. But subscribe and like. I'll definitely have more rap stuff coming soon. The butt wink. Very common thing. I see a lot of people butt winking. I used to butt wink, and it's something I think me and you kind of cleared up. Working together. So what are some of the things that cause the butt wink? And ultimately, like what is really the main issue with butt wink that people need to stop? Why should we clear it up in the first place?
It's a loaded question, right? And there's a lot of mechanical.
Feel free to ask a better question. If you think
no.
there's a better version of that question.
Let me roll on this one. I mean, I don't want to offend very many people out there, but I truly believe, even though I help people work at their squat and make sure they're doing it happily and safely, I don't think the human body is designed to be loading up that way and doing the amount of volume that we do when we choose to do it. That's also for another topic. Squatting with a body weight and having that amount of butt wink or flexion of the pelvis, which leads to flexion of the lumbar spine. I don't think it's a bad thing, right? When you weight, but
with a body weight,
and you throw 200-300 pounds on that, and you are actually, you're loading up the structures, some of the structures, within the spine that are meant to be stable and not move around and be loaded in that way. Once there's some aberrant motion there, and then that's loaded, you're setting yourself up for some injury.
So that butt wink is really putting a lot of pressure on your lower back, I guess.
Sure. And being a stickler for mechanics, I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this as well as I'd like to, but when you actually descend and butt wink, you actually are removing some of the torque out of the hips. And that's where we should be lifting. So if this is my hip, okay, and I'm descending, and my hip's supposed to be rotating, and all of a sudden this has rotated, I've actually lost some of the potential torque that should be coming out of my hip. So
I got you,
am I training my muscles the way, or the motion the way I intend? That's going to translate to better movement? Probably not.
So you're taking.
Can I really say anything to the guy that butt winks in his squat and lifts 700 pounds? Probably not. But again, performance and function don't meet, and I mean, there's injuries associated with every sport, and these guys have obviously made that choice that they accept those potential injuries.
Yeah, but I think it's also fair to say that just because they can lift a lot of weight doesn't mean that they couldn't do better if their mechanics were better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like,
so I bring that up
there's
because
a
I don't
correct
want.
mechanical process for these things, you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, anytime there's a contrast between what you want to do and what your body's designed to do, like expect something,
Can go wrong. Right?
an injury to ensue or some undesirable effect to happen. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the reason I bring that up is because, you know, I'd hate for someone to have that line of reasoning of, well, that guy's strong and he kind of does it, so what's the big deal?
Right,
sort of like deadlifting and rounding your lower back. Some guys who are new to the gym will look at like some really high level power lifters and be like, well, he's rounding his back.
Right.
Yeah, but he's an elite level lifter that has accepted that rounding his back helps him perform the best, even though there might be some repercussions.
Not to mention about those aforementioned like adaptations he has that makes his back rounding much more safer than the novice back rounding who hasn't got the adaptive stiffness that someone that's been doing it for 5-10 years has, right?
Very true.
So
back to the butt wink.
Going back to the butt wink. So if you're looking for underlying causes, the hamstrings cross two joints. Is the hamstring causing some sort of increased pull in the pelvis? Sure, maybe. You know what I mean? Again, nothing acts in isolation. That could be it. An inadequate amount of dorsiflexion or knee translation forward. Okay, if we're not able to do that, there's that trade-off there. You're going to get the flexion of the pelvis.
So the ankle mobility will fall under that umbrella, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a whole different umbrella of things that cause that inadequate ankle mobility. Is it that you are overly pronated? Are you overly supinated? You know, is it a bony block? Is it a soft tissue block? There's just a whole lot of reasons why these things can come up. So, you know, if I seem scattered when answering this, is because, man, it could be literally a lot of things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think.
And sorry, I just want to cut you off. Just do one last thing is, some people's lower backs and pelvises sit in a more scooped under position than others. So it might be even more important for them to control that pelvic, that tuck, that butt wink. Because we classify these as intolerant to flexion or flexion intolerant, because any more flexion could cause problems, right? Same way as someone with an extension overly extended, they're extension intolerant because their body already wants to go that way, and if you do something that causes them to go even further, an injury may ensue. So knowing your structure again is really important, and being able to put up blocks. And the best way to do that is just keep the spine neutral, keep the pelvis neutral, and make sure the torque stays in the hips. That's where it's supposed to be.
The point I wanted to make earlier was that I'm actually glad that, you know, I'm giving you the platform that you can riff like this, is because, you know, you'll see like the butt wink fix in like a 30-second Instagram video. And it's like, there's so many things at play that, you know, you're going to have a hard time figuring out the real issue with a short video. But I guess from a very practical point of view, how can someone stop the butt wink? Well, we just say, can we stop short of where they butt wink will be a sort of a quick fix for now?
Yeah, I mean, if your issue is that you're trying to gain depth and you subsequently wink, I'd say cut your depth. Having that, training that in that correct way might help you, you know, get more depth from the structures that are causing the butt wink, right? So let me explain there. So if you have an ankle problem and with you don't get enough dorsiflexion, but you're getting your depth from the butt wink, maybe once you clean up that butt wink or stop that from happening, you'll over time get flexion out of the ankle, right? So in some patients, it's not only just making things move more. I don't always have to do soft tissue and adjustments. It's teaching them what not to move, right? So providing it could be some area that they're unable to stay stiff in, that's causing like this, that's causing something that should be moving more, like the ankle, not to, right? So it's a trade-off there. So I mean, like I said, if it's an effort just to kind of lift weight and lift more weight that you're compromising your spine position, don't do it, man. You know, and
Not
no one's
worth it.
cutting you a check for it. You know,
Yeah, it's
don't
not
do
worth
it.
it,
You
yeah.
know, and that being said, I'm not trying to bad talk anyone. It's not on either of our styles, but you know, there really isn't a quick fix for anything. You know, if there was, I'd be a very rich man. You know what I mean? So understand that adaptation takes time.
Yeah.
Anything that you're doing, any change that you're trying to make to the body, whether it's just to teach your pelvis not to wink,
Yep.
or if you're actually just trying to get hypertrophy in your muscles generally, it takes time and it takes consistency. So
Yeah.
I think there's a misconception from a lot of these posts that things can happen overnight,
Yeah.
and here's the fix, and it's just they don't exist. So just like anything else, it's effort,
Yeah.
right, and consistency.
Yeah, because you know someone's hamstrings didn't get tight overnight. You
No.
know, like your
No.
hips didn't become immobile. You know, in that position overnight. It comes from a lot of sitting.
Correct.
Comes from a wide variety of things.
Absolutely, you have to always take all factors at play, right?
For sure.
And control for the controllables, and then what's uncontrollable, you work around.
It's not always about getting more mobility in certain things.
Right.
Sometimes it's about stop moving certain things.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I know one issue that I had in my squat is that I would hyperextend my lower back, right? So staying stiff in the entire spine throughout the whole movement, you know, will be an example of, you know, that's something that you shouldn't be moving, and opposed to always trying to make other things more mobile, right?
Right. So I mean, I keep going back to this because this is the philosophy I subscribe to the most. But the body is very mechanical, right? So if something that's designed to be stiff, or something designed not to move or to be stable, moves excessively, it's probably because something adjacent to it is not moving, right? So again, I keep going back to the ankle, but if the ankle, which is supposed to be a mobile joint, is inadequate in its movement, the knee, which is supposed to be relatively stable, starts to adopt properties of the ankle that shouldn't be there, right? And going up the chain, if we know that our knee is diving, we lost some range of motion in our hip,
Yep.
right? And our hip is supposed to be mobile, right? And I mean, as the hip is not mobile, we know the first place for our hip to reach for motion when it doesn't move is our lower back,
There you go.
which is supposed to be stable,
Yep.
starts to move. So you can see how these things can transpire, right? So understanding what to move and when to move it, or what to keep stiff and when not to move it, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
is important. You know, postural awareness is very important.
That's incredible. So we're gonna wrap up with that. Big shout out to my boy,
My man,
my
thank you so
chiropractor, the doctor himself, Dr. Rob. This is not some manufactured stuff. Like this is my homie right here, and I've been seeing you for how long? 6 months?
Yeah, it's about 6 months. Yeah,
Maybe even more. But it's
Yeah.
like he's my go-to guy for all these issues.
much appreciated.
I'm not even hurt right now,
Yeah.
and I'm here coming
Yeah,
to check
say
you,
it.
getting
I like
things,
it. I like
get like a prehab.
You practice what you preach. I
Exactly.
respect that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So if you guys want to see more, leave the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to put all the links for Rob, his Instagram, his website, the location to his where he practices in Mississauga, Ontario.
Yes, sir.
And I highly recommend this guy if you want to, if you have any issues you want to check out and you're in the area, come check him out.
All are
So
welcome. Thank you very much.
anything you want to add, or you good?
We're good, man.
Yeah?
Thank you guys. Yeah, thanks for
All right,
having me,
man.
bro.
All right, guys. Thanks for
Okay.
watching. Peace.